News live in 3. All right, what is going on? Trump says that Ukraine and Russia talks coming to a head and that no one is playing him. By playing him, meaning no one's messing around, that they are not, filling his rear end with smoke, right? But essentially, this is not the big story here. In fact, the big story is what Marco Rubio said in the same day. Again, President Donald on Friday said negotiations between Ukraine and Russia are coming to a head and insisted that neither side is playing him in his push to end the grinding war. Trump spoke shortly after Secretary of State Marco Rubio, again, this is the important part, warned that the U.S. may just move on from trying to secure a Russia-Ukraine peace deal if there is no progress in the coming days after months of efforts having failed to bring the end to the fighting. Essentially saying, if you guys don't come to agreement, we'll just pull out of it. We'll wash our hands of it. You guys can handle it. Europe can handle it. It's your issue. We're out. Essentially, if this happens, we are in a whole different world. And again, we don't know what will happen. It might be a good thing, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that are cheering that on. There's people that have been saying that since the beginning of this conflict, saying, hey, this isn't our conflict to begin with. Heck, this is a lot like World War II and World War I, where our country said the exact same thing. Hey, we're not, we're not the ones in a war right here. Why do we have to be the, world war fighters? Well, again, if this does happen, it's going to be a gigantic deal. Now, before we move on, we're going to talk about, of course, the CIA director says what they say about a certain country, and of course talking about them as a number one enemy. They are, of course, coming out with exactly what I thought that was going to happen. They are now telling the public exactly what we've thought was going to be said. So we'll talk about that here in a second, and we're going to talk about the Iran missile parade. So that's nuts in itself. But before we do, I do want to remind you guys, the contest is now over. We are going to be announcing the 5 actual winners. We already have put the emails out there, but we're going to be, of course, announcing the 5 contacted winners of that contest. But again, the sale that went alongside that, again, over at marfoogle.com/EMP, again, is still there. So the Liberty sale, make sure to go check it out. Of course, that is marfooglenews.com/EMP. I'll pull that up at the very end, but let's get right back into the news. All right, Dex, let's talk about the CIA director says China is the number one priority and poses biggest challenge from the adversary in U.S. history.
I mean, how many more leaders, whether it's Hegseth, the White House, or others, and now the CIA director, have got to tell us that we're going to war with China? I mean, look, John Ratcliffe declared in an internal memo that China is his top priority for the agency, warning that no adversary in history in our nation has presented more formidable challenge or more capable strategic competitor than the CCP. So, internal CIA memo directed to the agency's rank and file.
So when you see that, when I see this, of course, to many of the people that have watched me for years, you guys know my general hunch, and no matter what mainstream is saying, even if China is not in the news, I believe that China has a giant part in this. China, of course, it's hard for our community to agree on almost anything, and a lot of people debate almost everything. Now, in the last 10 years, especially with the internet, it's almost like you could literally take the sky is blue, and people are like, I don't know, colorblind, it might be purple, and they argue about it, and some people go, no, it's actually not blue, it is purple. And it's like, at this point, there is one thing for sure. These countries have separated, obviously, through, hundreds and hundreds of years. And there are governments that are set up, and there are people that want to rule the world. There are also these shadowy groups, and this is what makes it confusing. Over the last 10 years, we know that, say, Xi has friends that are also friends with, say, even Donald, or friends with the French president, or friends with the leaders of 3-letter agencies or 3-letter health agencies and things like this. We know that there's these groups that are essentially trying to change the entire world. They are actually trying to not only bring in new currencies, a new agenda. I mean, they're pushing hard for a one, world kind of thing going here, as far as everybody under the same umbrella. And this is something that we really have to look at. But at the same time, say a war with China, that may well be the thing that ends up bringing that in and heralding that into existence. So there's so many naysayers and so many skeptics to anything that I may say. And I know most of my audience is not. But again, I don't ask you to believe me. I ask you to go look for yourself. If you follow this on a daily basis, you will see patterns. You can't help but see patterns. Even I told you guys I had a 2-hour discussion with Grok the other day, and it wasn't like it was more like here's my ideas, and do these have any validity? Can you debunk all of my different things? And I'm seeing that these are connected. And Grok couldn't. And Grok actually found 50 different things to actually back up what I've been saying. And again, there is something about Grok and AI in general where they will try to find you things. I specifically gave it instructions to debunk me and to not just blow smoke up my butt and say, hey, you're totally right. And it actually went through, and it went through all of the different options of why all of these things are going on with China, with Greenland, with Russia, Ukraine, North Korea, South Korea, Venezuela, Guyana, our border, Golden Dome, our Navy, our border right now, Mexico, the cartels. Everything looks like we are about at the precipice, and Japan, of course, of a huge, massive war. And the thing is people have looked at World War III as the end of the world. It is not the end of the world. It is the start of the new one. And that's my firm belief, and I'm going to stick to it. And the thing is everybody wants instant gratification. They're saying, well, it's Wednesday and it hasn't happened, Adam. But when this does happen, this is not going to be anything that anybody wants to see. I don't want to see it. I don't want my kids to see it. I don't want any of you to see it. Again, when all of this goes down, it's going to be horrendous. It's going to be possibly kids like my 19-year-old daughter getting freaking drafted. Again, they're trying to add women into the draft. There's a lot of freaking signs that something big is coming. But as far as the CIA, we've talked about them specifically the last 2 weeks, and I've been doing research on old ops from even back in 2001, like Jawbreaker. I think I may be misquoting this, Azonian State, or it was another one that had to do with the Panama Canal with nuclear submarines and all sorts of crazy stuff at the very beginning of the Panama Canal deals and all of that. There's a lot of things that have eerie similarities to the past. And I mean, it's the same playbooks. If you really think about it, we're dealing with people. And these are people that aren't exactly Einsteins or super geniuses. These are people that have to go, well, do we have instructions for something like this? And they go, well, we did this back in 2001. We could totally do the same. And that's exactly what it looks like they're doing. They have used the same playbook time and time again because, well, that's what humans have to do. There's playbooks for these kind of things. And once you actually study the past, you can see the future. And this is why I think that a lot of naysayers and skeptics, I almost think that either they are so ingrained in their view of history or they are completely ignorant of it to say that they don't think anything is about to happen. Because if you know history and you see this, there's no way you could see the exact same things happening today and go, wait a second, this is really weird. The Bagram Air Force Base getting taken over with in a lot of people, that was like the final nail in the coffin for a war. Something is going on. They're working with local forces, I bet, in the Middle East, and they're about to pop things off. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Dex, when the CIA is involved, this is a big deal. And this is an internal memo that China is the top priority. This just goes alongside the lines of what we've been saying for years, and now all of a sudden mainstream media is going to start covering it. I don't think people are going to believe it because now mainstream will be covering it.
Well, and yeah, layer in, trade wars. The trade wars happen before real wars. So yeah, everything is lining up.
And that's the thing. Not all wars start with somebody taking the life of another person. Not all wars, start with, oh, we're going to just take your country over. They start with actions that are just irredeemable. There's things that they go past a certain line and they can't go back. It seems like I very well hope that we are not at that line right now. But again, a lot of people are looking at this and going, well, it's about time. I've talked to about 3 or 4 people out of my group of friends. They've said, well, yeah, let's do it. Let's get on with it. Let's get on with this war with China. Screw China. But this isn't going to be something anybody wants to see. A war with China is going to mean massive cyber attacks, possible people that are already implanted in our country. If you think Iran has sleeper cells, I can only imagine what China has, especially with the last 4 years of numbers that were suspiciously ginormous, record-breaking, and absolutely unprecedented. So again, we're not talking about, parachutes falling out of the sky. We're talking about taps on the back of the shoulder and saying, hey, I'm here. That's what I think it could happen if this goes in the wrong direction, which it very well looks like it does, and that's why we tell you to prep. Dex, let's talk about Iran and parades missiles through the streets in a show of force as nuclear talks ramp up.
Yeah, so this was their Army Day, and they were displaying their military might. The IRG was. They had thousands of troops in the streets. They had brought along their S-3000 missile system, defense systems, drones, and other military hardware. So, obviously a good show of force, but something that is relevant, aside from it being a specific holiday, so to speak, or a celebration day. It's also, while we're right in the midst of everyone, pushing for either negotiation or all-out war with Iran.
Yeah, and a war with Iran, what is that going to look like? Is that going to look much like our, prior war on terror? Well, it looks like they're taking the same steps. In 2001, after the Twin Towers, after that event, the first thing they did was not the shock and awe, and of course the shock and awe came alongside all of these events. The first thing they did is they sent a very small group, I think it was like 10 or 11 CIA agents with all a different specialty, including a medic, a person who was a translator, a cameraman. I mean, like they were totally ganding this thing up. They sent CIA there with like $3 million cash, and they handed this $3 million cash out to local forces. Those local forces, essentially this money talks. They, I think it was Masood, Ansia Masood. I forget how you pronounce his name, but Masood, this guy that was leading the Northern Forces. There was, of course, the Taliban, and they had the Northern Forces. Well, the Northern Forces had this leader that had this valley that was under their control, and they said, hey, this is the perfect guy to control, right? That guy they ended up working with him. He was very short-lived. He ended up having a report or some sort of interview. I don't know if you guys remember this. It was a long time ago. And the reporters that were actually undercover had a video camera that actually had an explosive inside. It went off and it took the guy out. They then worked with his successor, and because of his perishing, everybody in that region was like gung-ho to work with the U.S. government to take out Taliban, or at least that side of these people. And I know that there's Ganda all mixed up into, what really happened, but the CIA went there with $3 million cash, and they essentially spotted all of their targets. They had local forces do it instead of U.S. forces because boots on the ground was something they didn't want. Then at some point during this whole thing, they go, screw it, shock and awe. So we know years ago there was comments talked about the 7 countries in 7 years they were going to do, Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq. And then finally on the end of that list was Iran. So at some, in some ways, a lot of us in our community have looked at Iran for a very long time and thought this is almost overdue. Iran and Israel have their super beef. And of course, Israel, if you know how closely we've been tied into Israel, and some believe that they have had a lot of control over the U.S., that this is something that isn't going to go away. It's just a matter of time before it happens. But you have to look at, is this going to be a benefit if Iran and Russia and China, in the current situation that it is, all of them are sanctioned, all of them are decoupling, all of them are trying to work together to basically sidestep the U.S. Is this the time when they say, you know what, let's not wait. Let's do this all together. Let's take out the big guy. Let's make our own currency, screw the U.S. dollar, and let's start over. And they might have even had meetings with the 3, shadowy groups above it, or 50, who knows. And they may have said, hey, after the dust settles, this, and this will be the set rules. I think it's more like that than anything else. And again, a lot of people have a lot of hope in our president that he's able to stop this, but he is only one man. And the president, the president position doesn't have all giving power. I mean, there's things that it cannot do. So I'm very hopeful and optimistic that this thing will go well. But at the same time, I think that people should really, really start preparing not only to have your ducks in a row, but be preparing for a potential world war. I don't think it's a potential. I think this is something that's going to happen. So again, join us for Marfoogle TV on our sister channel. We're going to talk about all of the rest. There is a lot more. In fact, on our sister channel, we're going to talk about this. World War III is being planned here. We'll talk about where here is over on our next show. Again, make sure to go check that out on Marfoogle TV. It will be right after this. If you're in the chat, just stay here. You'll be ported over. If you're watching the replay, all you have to do is click here. We'll see you in just a minute. Be safe, be prepared, and Marf out.
One.